Okay, so if we look at page 28 in your 4.4, 4.5 packet, we're going to go over some word problems. Now, these word problems have you compare graphs. Some of the graphs will have different slopes, and some of the graphs will have the same slope and different y-intercepts. And we're going to compare how we can look at the equation, know the difference, and how we can look at the graph and know the difference and what the significance is. So let's look at this problem. It says, my gym charges a one-time membership fee of $100 and charges $20 per month to work out. This can be modeled by this equation. Now notice it said 20 per month. When you see that word per, you know the 20 is going to represent the slope. So one equation is C equals 20m plus 100. Okay. And C represents the total cost I've spent on gym membership, and M is the number of months I belonged. My husband's gym charges a one-time membership fee of $60 and then also charges $20, and I wrote a month, but that really means per month to work out. And this can be modeled by this equation, C equals 20m plus 60. Okay. Graph both of these on same coordinate plane, be sure to label. Okay, now, before we actually graph, we do have to label the graph, and we also have to figure out what the increments are. Now, let me just move this up a little bit. Okay, so we know that C equals cost and M equals the number of months. Well, the number of months is time, and we know time always goes on the x-axis. So the number of months goes on the x, and the cost goes on the y. So that's the first thing we have to label. Now, because we can't have negative months or negative cost, this is going to be just quadrant 1. So I'm going to show that this is the x-axis and that's the y-axis. Okay, now I have to figure out increments. Well, to help me come up with increments, I'm going to use my equations. So first, I'm going to say this is months and this is cost. This is months and this is cost. So I think, what's my minimum number of months? And that would be 0. And how with months, what should I count by? 12, 24? No, months I should count by 1. So I'm going to put in 0, 1, 2, 3. So let's plug in, and so over here I'll label 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If this is 0, this is 100, because I plug 0 in there. 20 times 0 is 0, plus 100 is 100. 20 times 1 is 20, so this would be 120. 20 times 2 is 40, so this would be 140, and this would be 160. So when I look at cost, it seems to be going up by 20. So 20 would be good increments on cost. So I'll start with 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, 140, 160, 180. Okay, now let's put it in here. Again, 0, 1, 2, 3. This would be 60. This would be 80. This would be 100. And this would be 120. Okay, so now I'm going to graph. I will graph, actually, this is what I'm going to do. Let me erase that for a second. And I'm going to put this in blue. So when I graph that one, that will be in blue. So let me start with that one. So that starts at 0, 60, 180, and this goes on. So 2 important things when I graph that. This is a ray. Why is it a ray? Well, because even though I'm joining for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, in theory, I could belong for 1.5 months. I could belong to partial months. Plus, I could belong for a lot longer than just the 5 months I have there. So I put the arrow. But the arrow cannot go in this direction because I can't join for -2 months. So that's why this is a ray. Now, let's graph the other one. The other one starts at 0, 100, and it goes here. And when we graph these 2 lines, they appear to be parallel. And they are parallel. And they are parallel because they have the same slope, but they have different y-intercepts. And when lines have the same slope but different y-intercepts, they are parallel. And what this shows you is that the difference between what I pay and what my husband pays stays the same over time. Because the slope is the same, the difference stays the same. Okay, now there are more questions here. I'm going to move this up. And the first question says, what does the slope of the graph represent? Well, these are those kinds of questions you always get on like the NJSLA or the PARCC, those standardized tests that everybody hates. So let's think about what the slope represents. Well, we know slope represents the change in y over the change in x, right? It's the rise over the run. Well, what does the y represent? Well, the y represents the cost. So it's the change in the cost per month. So since the slope is the change in y over the change in x, just put what the y represents over what the x represents. And so the slope is cost per month. Okay, when you look at it like that way, it's not that confusing. Then it says, what does the y-intercepts represent? Well, what does 60 represent here, and what does 100 represent here? Well, let's look back into the problem, and it tells us the membership fee is 60, and the membership fee is 100. So that means, what does the y-intercept represent? It represents the membership fee. And then it says, use the graphs to determine the difference in cost between me and my husband after 2 months and after 5 months. How can this be explained? Okay, well, if we look at the change in cost after 2 months, let's look at our graph. What's the cost differential? It's 40. Well, let's look at the cost differential here because it's right here. Well, that's 40. This cost differential is 40. And this cost differential is 40. So if we were to look at 5 months, the cost differential would be 40. So why does the cost differential stay the same? We will say cost difference is always 40. And why? It's because the slopes of both lines are the same. So since the slopes of both lines are the same, the cost difference will always be the same. Okay, so that's going to end this video, and we'll do another video for pages 29 and 30.